teachers' voices in teaching reading through the use of phonics and whole language methods for the lower primary students in rural area schools in Kapit, Sarawak. Basically, these presentations will be divided into three different chapters, which is Chapter 1, Introduction, Chapter 2, Literature Review, Chapter 3, Methodology. Chapter 1, Introduction. Without the skills of reading and the motivations for reading to learn, students' academic progressions is limited. It also has become essential in the later stages of their formal education, where all learners in Malaysia are required to sit for a national examinations when they are in the 6th grade. Thus, this ought them to be able to master these skills in order to answer the questions. Phonics. So basically, phonics is taught by using the grapheme phoneme association methods. A grapheme is a written letter where a phoneme is a sound that the letter represents. Learners are taught the vowels, consonants, and blends, and phonic approach stresses on the letter-sound relationship. Whole language. Whole language is basically teaching children to recognize words in isolation. Children are taught to read words as a whole rather than as a parts. Background of the study. Reading is a process that needs to be trained, and it is not an overnight process as it is a complex process, where it is also considered as reading is a life support system as we all need for all kind of purposes. Statement of problem. In rural Malaysia, both the absence of the reading cultures and teachers' lack of knowledge about approaches to teaching reading have resulted in high level of illiteracy. The significance of the study. The outcomes of the study is able to provide useful information regarding on the sample's achievement in learning the reading skills through different approaches as targeted in the KSSR objective. Objective of the study to find out the effectiveness and the suitability of both approaches in teaching readings for advanced learners and weak performance learners. Number 2, to ascertain if students of different demographics have such a relationships to the effectiveness of using these two teaching approaches. Number 3, to learn if there is any relationship between the students' current academic performances and the result of UPSR and Linus program. Research questions. Number 1, how the teacher improve their teaching skills in the area of teaching reading through the use of phonics and whole language. Number 2, which approach suit advanced students either phonics or whole language in teaching reading skills in ESL classroom. And number 3, do students with different levels are able or to use approaches in learning reading skills in ESL classroom. Do these conceptual frameworks is the one that has been used in order to model the research. Chapter 2, Literature Review. In this chapter, it will be divided into two different subtopics, which is the first subtopic is phonic approach and the second subtopic is whole language approach. The definitions of the phonic approach is known as a letter to sound which a particular person uses in order to acquire the competency in pronunciations of English. In the phonic approach to reading words recognition is taught by using the grapheme phonemes association methods. The issues in the phonic approach, various studies has been conducted and proved that phonemic awareness is associated with the reading ability in the early stage of formal education, and it keeps expand until the learners move to the next stage. In addition, phonological awareness and reading instructions are interrelated to one another as they reinforce each other. The learners who went through this approach will be exposed to discover the alphabetic principles. At the same time, by knowing to read alphabetic scripts, also will enhance phonological and phonemic awareness of one particular person's. And the phonemic awareness instructions is additional effectual when children are trained to use letter to signify phonemes and to apply their knowledge of phonemic awareness when reading. By spelling the words, it will indirectly improve phonemic awareness and later knowledge and speed up the acquisitions of the target language. Whole language. The definitions of whole language approach is a method of teaching reading by recognizing words as whole pieces of language. As for whole language, it is an approach that teaches students to know the whole chunks of words without separating or isolating them into parts as what phonics suggested. And it also focuses primarily on the developments of the sight words. Issues in the whole language approach. The whole language approach had existed for a very long time ago as Glenn Dorman 1989 used this method of teaching. According to him, he had set up the very first baby housing program in USA in 1960th century. So this proved that this approach has existed for a long time ago. The whole language approach is considered as a highly successful approach to early children learning. And this past recent year, the role of the whole language approach has changed from whole word approach, which incorporates the reading and the writing at the same times. Chapter 3, Methodology of the Study. So this study uses a mixed methods to collect the data. For quantitative, survey will be distributed to selected schools which share the same characteristics, while for qualitative, the interview session will be conducted for selected teachers from these selected schools. This survey is a survey study that focuses on finding out the level perceptions of all the teachers who taught English in lower primary level in all rural area schools in Kapit, in teaching reading skills to the students whether they prefer to use phonics or whole language approach. This study is also aimed to explore the area of language teaching reading strategies as to find out there is any relation between their students' level with the mixed abilities. This study also attempts to discover the type of strategy they use in teaching reading in English. Population and samples of the study. The respondents of the studies are English lower primary teachers who teach or who taught in all rural areas in Kapit district area. Instrument. In order to assess the English lower primary teachers' perception towards the use of phonics and whole language approach in teaching reading, two sets of questionnaires are carefully constructed. For interview session, a set of checklists will be constructed to get teachers deeper perception in teaching reading using these two approaches. These sets of series of questions are constructed based on the basic perceptions of teacher regarding on their practice of teaching reading. For data collections and the research framework, the model illustrates the research framework that was used as a basis to conduct the study. Two types of questionnaire are used in this chapter, in this study, and each measures different characteristics in teaching approaches that teachers have used. The other method instruments used by the researcher is interview session. This interview is conducted to 3 selected teachers in order to gain more information regarding on the approaches that they use in teaching reading. A specific time frame is given in order to make sure that the data is collected according to the time frame.